Hey guys, welcome to the video. Today we're gonna continue teaching you how to construct game plans using NCE 3.0. Again, we are going to cover one of the most frequent situations, so when we call in position against an out of position raiser. Good understanding of your opponent tendencies will let you widen your preflop calling range, and therefore you'll be able to exploit your opponent more frequently. In other words, better we understand how to exploit him, the more we can earn from exploiting him, but also we'll have better understanding of how many opportunities we used to miss, and we are not gonna miss them anymore. There is a nice metaphor that I've read somewhere, that if you don't know where you go, you won't even know when you get there. And I think with exploiting is kind of the same. We want to exploit every opportunity, but first we need to get to know what we want to exploit, and we want to do it systematically. So that's what we're going to focus on for today. Okay, so we are in the hand. We have pocket nines on the button, and we face a raise from MP. We called our hand. I don't really 3-bet pocket nines all that often, and especially having a recreational player behind, I think we're gonna always call this hand. So let's get to the flop, and here we're gonna need to locate a pop-up responsible for the statistics that we might want to use. So let's go to the fourth row, the first statistic, the 33%. This statistic is out of position flop c-bet in single raise spots. We just click it and we have the pop-up we wanted. So the name of the pop-up is single raise spots out of position raiser, that's him. And we called in position, that's us. We called on the button, so it's all good. This here is just for us to identify faster whether the pop-up is the one we need or not. So we figured it's a nice way to do it. Okay, so first thing is we want to go to the yellow rectangle where all the preflop stats are located, and we want to see what his raise first is, and raise first is 21%. But if we hover over it, we can see what kind of hand he's opening with, and I think it's very important to look at it. And for example, this guy is not opening low pocket pairs, and in general I don't think he'll be very strong on low boards, because for the most part, if he doesn't have a set, then he'll have the maximum of an overpair. So we can attack him on the low boards, but I don't think we can attack him on the high card boards, like, you know, ace 10, 9 or something like that, because he plays every Broadway hand, as we can see, even the offsuit Broadways. So I think it's good to look at these matrices here. Okay, so we know how much he opens and what he opens. Now let's go to the bolded area here, where all the post-flop stats are. And the first thing almost always is going to the green rectangle, and in general we want to start our consideration from looking at the red row, which is usually c-bet or fold to c-bet, and in this case it's c-bet out of position, and the numbers are 33% for the flop, 43 for the turn, and 38 for the river. It's generally low. It's low on the flop, and that means that we can realize equity easily, and we can bluff him out of the hand potentially on the later streets. It's low on the turn, and that means that he's easy to float if he's folding somewhere, of course. And also that we realize equity. Again, we get the river cards for free pretty often. And low river c-bet means that he won't put us in difficult spots. And I think it's important that Um, Nobody wants to, be in a situation where he doesn't know what to do, and this guy won't put us in too much trouble. So, seeing this number, we can definitely overfold, and by that I mean folding pretty strong hands against his third barrel. But it's not gonna happen very often, and therefore we can get to showdown easily, which is also a nice. It's a nice thing for us. So yeah, this is about c-bets. Now let's go to the blue row here. C-bet out of position and fold versus raise. It's 23%, but I don't think anybody's surprised seeing his 33% flop c-bet. But if we want to see what kind of hand he's c-betting, it's good to see the white area here, the second stat. And what's actually surprising is that there's a lot of green areas in the chart, meaning that he has a lot of air. So it might mean that he's check calling or even check raising with some of his strong range, strong hands, and that's important to keep it in mind for later. But what's actually the biggest conclusion for us, that if we have our nut hands or value hands, we should probably just raise them on the flop and fast play almost always, because the opposite action to us raising it on the flop is if we call it on the flop and then wait for him to c-bet the turn. But it's not gonna happen very often. So we don't have any extra value of him c-betting the turn. So we just raise it on the flop, and we still have him calling 3/4 of the time plus two more streets to play. So I think it's a superior plan to fast play our nuts. On the turn, we don't have sample, but in general, I don't really raise a lot against guys who c-bet low, who don't c-bet very often. I mean, my value comes from pushing people out of their bluffs mostly, and sometimes also from their actual hands. But if I were to just raise so they can fold their actual hands, I don't think it's gonna it's gonna be good. So don't don't raise too much. That's my suggestion. On the river, we don't have a sample size as well, but I wouldn't raise. I just play normal. Nothing I can say about this statistic. So just play normal. He's c-betting low, so don't try to push him out of the hand. Okay. So we have our raising covered, but we haven't looked into skip c-bet and folds yet. So that's what we're gonna do. It's the first green row in the first row in the green rectangle. Some people call them check folds, but we name them skip c-bet and folds. So my suggestion is going from the river to the flop. There's not much to talk about on the river, so just play normal. Don't do anything fancy. But the situation changes on the turn, where our opponent's c-bet is 43%. So as I mentioned earlier, it's pretty low. But also his skip c-bet and fold is 59%, and this is a high number for check fold on the turn, especially given this low c-bet stat. So I think I would float him with some kind of equity hands like gut shots, backdoor flush draw plus overcard, stuff that can actually pick up some equity on the turn, or actually hit on the turn, but it's not really a good hand. But because the c-bet is 43%, the other 57%, I'm gonna win the pot in 60% of the time. So this is a lot of money for an investment of calling a c-bet on the flop. But I need to repeat one more time. because it's really crucial to look at the c-bet frequencies and skip folds together. If this skip fold c-bet would be 100% after big sample, but his c-bet is 90%, the problem is we never get there because we only get there 10% of the time. So just don't get too excited if you see skip c-bet and fold that is super high when you get really high c-bets as well. It's just we won't be able to exploit it. Another thing is the yellow stat here, which is check raise SPFR. It's 17% for this guy. That's fairly high, I think, but I just want to mention that you shouldn't be too worried about it because it won't decrease value of the really high skip fold. You make money by him folding, and even if he check raised the rest, the 41%, it doesn't change the fact that you won by betting the turn. So when it's actually important is when we have some kind of a hand, like let's say top pair medium kicker, we called on the flop, then on the turn he checked, and we should really try to think if we want to bet on the turn. I think mostly not, because he's gonna check fold 60% of the time, so it's like he's gonna fold a lot of the hands that he might actually bluff with on the river. And also top pair medium kicker is not necessarily a hand that I feel comfortable facing a check raise, and I don't wanna call it down, and I don't really wanna see a check raise even. So I would probably check behind and then bet on the river against his check, or call his bet. So yeah, that would be about it. And now we can go to the flop. And on the flop, our decision is between stabbing it, and we can also check back and get a free card. Yeah, of course, we only talk about the situation when he didn't c-bet. We covered him c-betting earlier, so yeah. He has a low c-bet out of position, but also low skip fold. So the best would be if somebody has a c-bet like this and 60% skip fold. Then it's printing money. We can widen our range to, we can call a lot of hands, because it's just gonna happen most of the time. Plus we still have equity, you have to remember. So he's not folding on the flop, but also he's not folding against our continuation stab on the turn, but he is folding 55% on the river if we bet the flop, the turn, and the river. So that's good, but it's not good enough to just blindly bet any two on the flop, I think, because you have to remember that you invest money here on the flop, also here on the turn, and he's not folding on the turn enough, and then you win on the river. Yes, that's true, but you have to remember that you voluntarily put money on the flop and on the turn just to win on the river. So it's not like you win 55% of his money, because there's also the money that you put just to get to the river, to this situation. So it's not as sweet as you can think at first. So yeah, so there is stabbing, and if we don't stab, we see the turn card, and if we get to the turn, we automatically go to the blue rectangle here, and the blue rectangle is responsible for the turn stats and the turn play. So yeah, let's start with the red stat. Usually we start with the red stats in any of the rectangles. So the delayed c-bet is 44%. It's not high, so it means that we can even get 2 free cards. But also if he double check, he's not really check folding a lot. So unless I get some extra equity, then I just give it up. But if he does delayed c-bet, he continues 61%. So you need to remember that you either call twice or you just fold right away. If you don't want to call twice, just fold. If you have a really weak hand, you have to remember that in his delayed c-bet, there will be strong hands because he has to have with so low c-bet on the flop and also with so much air on the flop. So as you can see, his range has a lot of really good hands: 2 pairs, trips, combo draw, top pair, set, nut flush, straight. So there's a lot of strong hands. So I think it's logical that he's gonna continue on the river as well. And this means I would probably just fold a lot against his delayed c-bet, unless there is a lot of draw possibilities on the turn and he might just start betting them. Then I would probably call twice, unless of course on the blank river, because I think, yeah, still he does have a lot of draws. Yeah, so that's it. Delayed and fold versus raise 4 out of 4 times. That's interesting, especially when we see that he delayed c-bet a lot of strong hands. I think it's actually surprising that he folded 4 out of 4 times. Yeah, but I don't know. Might be a sample, like really lucky run out or something, or I don't know. Or maybe he's folding top pairs after delayed c-bet and if he gets raised. I don't know. You can bluff sometimes and check it, I guess, but yeah. So that would be it with the blue rectangle. So we have the red rectangle left, and check fold stat is 56%. It's not as high as in the previous video, but it's still high enough for us to bet all the hands that cannot beat ace high. So I would even probably see turn into bluff ace highs, because after 3 checks, so after 5 cards, there's a chance that you hit anything like third pair. You can value bet even third pair after so many checks. So usually you'll be able to fold out better hands, and you should definitely try to do it. Just EV plus. Okay, then we can make a quick summary. So if he doesn't bet the flop, I would go 3 times with equity to push him off medium value range, especially on dynamic boards. The more can change, there's a high chance that it will help us and make it harder for him to call down. If he does bet the flop, we should float with backdoor equity, with some gut shots, stuff like that, because he has a high skip fold turn, and it's easy. Also, it's easy to get to the showdown if you want. We should raise our value hands right on the flop, because there's no money in slow playing. His turn c-bet is low, and he's calling raises really frequently. We overfold versus reverse c-bet, because if his c-bet is low, there's not a lot of room to bluff. So simply because of that. Also, we should decide on the turn whether we want to call his delayed c-bet and river bet, because if he bets the turn, if he delayed c-bets, he also bets the river very frequently. So in general, I think you want to fold weak second pairs and worse right away. And if nobody bet until the river, then you should definitely bet, unless you have some kind of showdown value that can beat ace high. Just bet it out. Okay, we have our hand here with pocket nines, so let's quickly analyze it. Our opponent c-bets 950 into 15, and we're definitely gonna call because of his tendencies. Even though the c-bet is low, we know that he has a lot of air and he slows down a lot on the turn, so he'll be easy to play against. So we call, and the turn is 2 of spades, so the bottom card paired, and what he does is he c-bets again. And two things now. I don't think people really bluff a lot on pairing cards. They tend to slow down. And also his c-bet is low. So I think, if there's a guy who c-bets 60%, he slows down. And the guy who has 40% c-bet, I think he almost never bluffs in this spot. So I think the best play here is to fold. Even though it might look weak, I think it's better than calling. Of course, calling cannot be that bad because his c-bet on the river is 38%, so we'll get to the showdown fairly easy and frequently. But I just think folding is better because there's high chance he has 10 or better. But our hero called, and our river card is the best we could get, and our opponent checked. So now I think we should bet, obviously, but the sizing should be much bigger. I think it should be around pot size bet, because if our opponent is full of 10x or over pairs or some kind of pairs in general, because as I said, I don't see him bluffing too much, or if he is bluffing, he's bluffing with hands like flush draws, and flush draws won't call you anyway. So if he has some kind of showdown value, he'll have a decision between check call or check fold, and I want to polarize myself as much as possible, so I would bet probably around 70, 73, 71, something like that, because I don't see him folding with 10x when the flush draw missed. So I would go bigger. Okay. Unfortunately, we cannot see what he had, but I guess obviously he had to have some kind of a 10 or jacks or something like that. In this video, you learned how to create game plan against a PFR by calling in position, what to look at when thinking about widening your preflop calling range, how to exploit guys who don't c-bet a lot, and that being consistent is the key. And you have to either fold right away or call twice in certain spots where your opponent almost always bets twice. Thank you for your attention, and hope you liked it. Cheers.